I'm Louise Simonis, and since 2018, I am part of the organizing team of the SFSCON, the South Tyrol Free Software Conference. Sorry, please. So SFSCON is one of Europe's leading conference of free software, on free software, and where decision makers and developers come together and inspire each other on free software. Who has ever been at SFSCON? Almost everybody. Very good. Thank you. But to be honest, do you know how to get to Auditorium A2 in Neutech Park? No, not valid. Not valid. Organization team, not valid. Okay. In general, who has ever got lost at an event? Okay, it's empty. Okay. Patrick, please, raise your hand. Okay, good. It happens at the best of us. Sorry, too many things. Every year, SFSCON grows, and every year, Neutech Park grows too. And every year, we, as organizer of the SFSCON team, we add more parallel sessions, more talks, more spaces, more things happenings at once. And this is the point we are getting to the c3nav. Someday, maybe, the new Faculty of Engineering will be part of this FESCON. And this could be really great, but it could also be a problem. So we need a better way to guide people to through the venue and to understand where A2 building is in Neutech Park. Our dilemma was, if SFSCON keeps growing, we need tools to make wayfinding easier, obviously. But we also have another dilemma. We are going to experiment something new without trying in the. Are we going to test something new in a current setup of SFSCON or in a new setup? We have to do it in this setup because we know this conference, but we don't know anything about the future main, bigger, probably conference. So the obvious question for us was last year, why not to start now and prepare for the future of the conference? And we also have to tackle this problem in an open source way. This is obviously, we want to talk about open source at SFSCON, but we also want to actively contribute to open source projects. So as Free Software Conference, we thought we need to improve this wayfinding, but we have to do it also in a way to contribute to open source. And we found inspiration at FOSDEM. FOSDEM in Brussels is a bigger conference than us, and they use this c3nav as a navigation system. And if it works for a huge campus, university campus as in Brussels, maybe it could work for SFSCON. And so this is our vision. We want to contribute to create something useful for SFSCON, but why not maybe for Neutech Park in the future? Okay, as Neutech Park Digital Events team, we are already embracing open source tools. We are using Pretix. You are registered to this event through Pretix. And we are also using pre-talks for the call for speaker. And let me advertise this. You have time till the 31st of March to apply to the Open Data Hub Day call for speakers. Go now and do it now. And in this environment, adding c3nav was something just that made sense for us. Okay, why c3nav? We know that. I already told you. The main point is it is a proven tool at FOSDEM. It is open source, so we can also work on it, contribute to it, and also work on it. And yes, the fact that we can give back to the community, for us, it's really important. But we have also a step over. Why stop at SFSCON? We imagine that c3nav could be used all year long at Noiterpark, not only at SFSCON, and could help startups, researchers, students, visitors to find their way more easily at Noiterpark. And there is so this is not only a conference project, but it's about creating something really useful and also truly open source. Okay, I've finished my introduction. Let's dive into the technical part. I'm not able to do that, so I'll give the word to Daniele, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Emily, for the introduction. I promise I will not be repeating what Emily already said so well, but nevertheless, it will take some time to get to the end of the presentation, so feel free to reach for the food when you did so. I won't be offended.
Oh, sorry. Thank you.
This was still yours. So let's thank Emily again.
Oh.
And let's start with the technical part, and I would like to start by telling you something that actually we are going to go through these 5 steps. I was told that good communication is based on the 5 W's, so I hope I chose the right ones. But anyways, my name is Daniele. I'm a person who writes code, but I'm not a professional developer. I used to be, but I'm not anymore. So I will bring some fresh takes, hopefully, to you as software developers. And these are what we have on the plate today. So we will talk about c3nav, the software, but also c3nav, the project. So how to approach a project like c3nav. We will talk about the SFSCON. Emily talked a lot already, but still it will be part of what we talk today, and we will compare it to other conferences. Now, the most important part today is you, the audience, and what I would like to bring to you is, as I said, a different point of view on some typical topics and what you encounter in your daily life as a developer. We will start with an overview of the indoor mapping software scene, and I will also try to give you some advice on how to interact with open source software when you are approaching a project that you may just have heard of and you want to have a fruitful collaboration. To this end, I'm also in the core team of an open source project, so I'm kind of on the other side of the fence, and I know what is welcome and what is less welcome by newcomers to a project, so I can also bring some insights about this. And since you are developers, I will add to the mix a couple of ideas that perhaps will stimulate you to contribute to c3nav or to the SFSCON version of c3nav, because there are some things that might be fairly easy to achieve and will bring a huge value to c3nav, the software, and SFSCON, the event. So, Emily already said a few words about why c3nav. And when I was approached by the SFSCON team, this was really clear. I mean, the task was, let's use c3nav. And here is my first advice on a different take on the matter. When a customer approaches you, or maybe another team in your company approaches you, if you are working on a team, and they tell you, I want this, you should always challenge the assumption that they want what they ask for. You should think about what's the value that they want to achieve by using this tool. So c3nav, in my view, was kind of a proxy to understand what was the real need. And the real value for the SFSCON was providing a way to find your way around when you are attending the conference. And c3nav comes with a few issues. Now, maybe the maintainers or core developers of c3nav are watching this or will watch this video, and I want to say that c3nav is a wonderful software that works very well. And this list, I mean, I put the downsides on top because of dramatization. So I want to make an argument for saying why c3nav has to be thoroughly evaluated, but still it makes sense. It made sense to use it, and it's a wonderful piece of software. Anyway, when we start, there was literally no documentation available. The team started working on the wiki, the team of c3nav, a few weeks after we started our endeavor. And actually, since last summer till now, their wiki has I think 3 pages and 9 revisions. So it's not very well documented. Another thing that perhaps is a bit technical, but we are here also to talk technical, is that c3nav contains its mapping within a reference system that is local. So it means that it's not possible to say I am on the OpenStreetMap view of Bolzano and I zoom into the Neuenberg Park and suddenly I'm inside the building and I can see where things are. Because technically speaking, the placement of the spaces of the buildings is not in the same reference system as the whole OpenStreetMap. So it's local. And it's also not possible to have some kind of pivot points, like, I don't know, you say, okay, this is the bus stop, and I have it in OpenStreetMap, and I have it also in c3nav, and I use this as a way to map things. It doesn't work. Please note that maybe it's possible, but it's not documented. I couldn't find a way to do so. So there are caveats, as you see, asterisks on the slide. And also another thing that we wanted to achieve together with the SFSCON team was providing a CI/CD pipeline to do the deployments. And it wasn't so easy to identify the stable releases of c3nav. c3nav is released, is developed thoroughly throughout the year. And there are a few key events that happen where they provide the mapping. Of course, the Chaos Computer Club is the main one. Is c3nav because it's C3 like the Chaos Computer Club event. So it makes sense that it's connected to that. But if you visit their website, which is c3nav.de, you will see that throughout the year the map changes because the event they are working with changes over the year. And we kind of use this as a proxy to identify which releases could be considered stable, but most of all we had to guess and see whether it was working stable or not and use a commit ID because they don't use text or things. On the outset, of course, is free software, so it's a perfect match. An Ansible playbook was shared by the FOSDEM team for a very old version, though, which is not compatible and was advised against using on the issue tracker of c3nav. So it was kind of things we tried and it worked out, but still we were confident this could work. And of course, as I said before, there are many advanced functionalities that were not in the scope for the first year. c3nav allows also, for instance, to place on the map every Wi-Fi access point in your venue, and then with their identifier. And then if you use the mobile app as a customer, as a visitor, you can get the location that is assumed from the access point which you are connected to. So they have lots of features, and actually for this they also provide some system, it looks like, on the backend, to manage the over-the-air firmware update of the base station, etc. So it can do lots of stuff, but they were out of scope, at least for the first year, for the SFSCON of last November. And actually the most important upside is that it's the only available tool for the job. Now, if you're like me, you look into your phones to prove me wrong, and I will save you the effort because I've proved myself right within the slides. So if you go to OpenStreetMap, to the wiki, there are a couple of pages about indoor mapping and indoor mapping apps. And it looks like there are quite some options. For instance, the campus in Klagenfurt provides a website that should work, looks like. Then you go there. This is my favorite test to do for indoor mapping, or in general for mapping application that are told to provide routing. You say, okay, I want to go. I think the pointer is not working.
You don't see the pointer on an LCD.
Yeah. So I want to go from room 111 to room 113. As you can see, from here to there is a door here, and no route could be found. So, I mean, it's supposed to work, but it's not really working. And then you say, okay, but this is just an instance. Perhaps it's been configured badly and it doesn't work because they draw this door, but maybe they didn't connect it to rooms or whatever. So you go to the software development and project lead, and you end up on the Nginx proxy manager welcome page. So it kind of looks abandoned to me. So it doesn't look like we can rely on this. Then there is another page where you have indoor mapping apps. So these are external apps that work with this. If you can see, only 2 of them mention routing among the features. One of them doesn't have any licensing information, so it's out of scope. By the way, I did try it. It didn't work, but it's out of scope anyways. And there is an AGPL 3 or later application that provides routing. This would be perfect because it would mean you can add the map to OpenStreetMap and have the zoom in and whatever. So you go there and you see that you end up on the new version, which is the one on the right. And routing is not yet available on the new version. But wait, there's an old version. So on the old version, the routing will be available. And it is. And as you can see, I did this very same test. There are 2 rooms that are adjacent one to the other. They have a door in between, and they want to go from here to there. But no. You are welcome still to prove me wrong, because I would like to find a way to have the indoor mapping that goes within OpenStreetMap and have working routing. But anyway, as I said, you have to challenge the assumption and the requirements when the customer comes to you, but you also have to know when to stop. So we had a deadline, and it was worth to be sure that c3nav was indeed the right tool of the job, because we did encounter some blockers along the road. And if you are not sure that this is the right way, you are always tempted to say, oh, maybe I should go back and check again. And as you all are aware of the sunken cost fallacy, it gets harder and harder to retract. So it makes sense to do this thorough evaluation at the beginning. It took me 1 day or maybe 1.5 days to do it. And then I was confident enough to say, okay, there is no real alternative that is worth checking. So let's see what it looks like to users. If you want, you can use the QR code to check it on your phone because it's live. The domain is maps.sfscon.it, so it's fairly easy. We will see a demo live, even though another advice, never do a live demo when you do a presentation, but I will do 2 live demos during this presentation. As you can see, it's fairly complete in the sense that I tried to take the worst case scenario, so going from the parking lot at level -2 to the auditorium in building A2. And what we are seeing here is that this is the ground floor, so we are not seeing what happens below the ground and what happens above the ground here. But still, you start from car park level 2, you are taken through the elevator to the ground floor. The system knows that from this door you are allowed to exit. Actually, you are not allowed to enter if you don't have a badge, but you can freely exit from the building from that door. And then you cross the piazza and you reach the actual new entrance of building A2 because it used to be on this side. But anyways, you go in from the right side and then of course you take the stairs and you reach level 2. Actually, we will see now in the live demo that I can say that I don't want to use the stairs, maybe because I have issues walking on the stairs, or I don't want to use the elevators because I don't like being closed inside an elevator. So I can do, for instance, well, let's see some options. We can say that we want to navigate to the makerspace from here. This is easy enough. But you can see that by default we are getting the shortest path, which has some stairs here, just after the crane hall on the left side. And if I want to say that, these are the details, if I want to say that I don't want to take stairs, I could choose that I manage to go down stairs but not up. But let's say that we want to avoid them completely. Then the system will switch to this path where there is this ramp that brings you to the destination. So this kind of, and now the system will remember that I don't want to use stairs because I said save and reroute. So in this case, if I want to go from the noise to the car park at level -2, it will tell me, okay, you go here, you take the elevator, and then I reach level -1 with this elevator because possibly this one doesn't go down to level 2. Then I go here, I take the ramps here, and I have to go to the other elevator, and in this case I reach finally level -2, and I reach my destination. So it's kind of useful, I would say. It works pretty fast, as you can see, and it has also some nice features, like if we go back here and we want, instead of getting a destination, we want to see where the toilets are, which are also important during an event. We have different classifications. We have toilets for men, for women, accessible, so without barriers. And I can highlight them all on the map. And this way, for instance, I can provide a permalink, so a link to a map that is highlighting where all the toilets are, or maybe where all the seminar rooms are. Every classification that you can think of, you can map it. And this way, you can also provide this kind of information as a QR code that is pointing directly to this page, for instance. This is also an added value which is important for an event. And besides the classification that you can do with the text when people do the searching, you can see that there are some color codes being used if we go to level. Well, here we can see, for instance, these colors that made sense. You can't really read here, I guess. Let me try to zoom. Didn't really help. Anyway, we have I'm sorry, I'm a man, and as most men I am color impaired, so I just see like dark blue, light blue, green, and red. Emily knows the colors, the SFSCON team chose the colors. So this kind of green tint was used for the hackathon spaces. This blue was for the event, so the SFSCON event. This dark blue is for the toilets, as you have noticed. This reddish is for the elevators. And if we go to level -1, you can see that the whole seminar rooms and the foyer are all at the same color of the spaces dedicated to the event. And there are not only rooms, as you can see, because, for instance, here we have some area which are part of rooms that have different colors, because, for instance, this part, which is where the coffee machine was, is yellow, and this yellow is for food and beverage, and this was the wardrobe, which was a utility. So also, if we go back to the ground floor, also the noise area was this yellow because it was, of course, it still is dedicated to food and beverage. So, as a user, I think you have seen that it brings some value. You are, as I said, you are free to play from your phone and check it out because I think it's worth it. But we want to go a bit more technical, and so we want to see not only how the user can use the map, but also how we can design them. And in this case, this is the second demo, which goes to a machine which is behind the VPN, so hopefully it will work. We start with a completely different view in the editor. Okay, this one was easier to zoom in. And as you can see, there are a couple of things that you can set, and now that you have seen them in the map, they make sense. So we can have, for instance, these location groups, which are used for some areas, so the check-in for speakers and for not speakers, the bike parking area, the spaces which you can think about as rooms, so the conference room, hackathon space, elevator, the car parking lot, the toilets, and the point of interest. We mapped the ATM, which is in the noise area, where you can pay your parking, and of course, these groups were used mostly for the coloring of the map. But then most of the mapping happens, of course, in the level. So you start defining a level, and which is, for instance, the ground floor. And in this case, we see a map which might seem similar to what we have seen before, but actually here what we can do is toggle the background image, which is a base map that was provided by the SFSCON team, which I was allowed to show during the presentation, but not to share, which is why this base map will not be part of what you can see in the main repository of the c3nav application, which we'll talk about later. Anyway, you basically, what you do is you get this map that sits, that you want to draw on top to. So for instance, okay, it's loading. This building A6, which is part of the map as building, because mostly you have to drive around it, so it was useful to have it as a reference for the user. As you can see, we also know how it is made inside, but we didn't add any space because it was not useful for the conference. If I want to add a space here, I can just go here and say that I want to add a new space, and then I draw something on the map. And here I can set everything that I want. And this will then go with the title that I choose. I can choose an icon for it. I can choose whether the labels should appear, like the entrance to the buildings that appear on the map. The name of the conference spaces appears a little bit smaller, and the other labels are not shown. So this is everything that I can set here and will end up to the map. But most interesting is what happens when we go inside a space. So let's take the piazza, which is fairly big. You can see here that there is this small blue dot. And this is everything that I can put inside a space. So I can put obstacles in here. They can be like columns, like the water tower is an obstacle in the piazza, of course. It's not something that you can cross. And if we go to the obstacle, oh no, maybe it's a building. Yeah, probably it makes sense that it's a building. Let's see what the obstacles are. That's why you should never do a demo. Okay, these are the obstacles. So as you know, outside of the noise area, there's the stairways, but next to the stairways there are these kind of walls that are probably 1 meter 20, yeah, 1 meter 60, and they start from the ground. So they have a height of 1 meter 60 and they start from the ground. And why is this important? Because the obstacles and the walls are connected to the small blue dots. So, as you have seen before, when we ask to route a path, the system knows whether I have to take stairs, so change the level I am in or not. How can it know it? Because we place these small blue dots in a space, and these are altitude markers. So I say that piazza is at 0.0 meters. So this is the reference for the vertical height. And this is what comes from the maps that I've got from the SFSCON team. Now, this space, the whole piazza, will be at level 0. Unless I put an obstacle where I can say, okay, this part is higher, it's 1.60 meters higher, or I put stairs. A stair is by definition, a step is abrupt change in height. A ramp, by definition, is a smooth change of height. So when I design the path, I can say, okay, this is something that requires to be able to walk on abrupt changes of height. And instead, if I cannot walk, I will be routed through the ramps that allowed me to move freely without having to walk. So basically, when you put this information to the map, we can maybe move to level -1, which is more interesting, I guess. And we also change to the -1 base map. For instance, you are probably aware, or maybe you never thought about this, that the floor of the foyer is at a different height than the floor of the parking lot. There are 3 long ramps that connect these 2 spaces. And as you can see here on the base map, we have the quotation of these main spaces. And so we can use this to say, okay, this is where this space is located in vertical. And then what the system does automatically is that if a space has some quota and is connected through doors to other spaces, also these other spaces will automatically be at the same quota. So a door is by definition of c3nav, the software, not by definition in the whole world, but in this case, a door is connects 2 spaces that are at the same level. So we don't have to actually put these altitude markers all the way around the map. We should just put them on strategical chosen points, and the system will figure out by itself how this connection works. And this is a good thing, but this comes with something that in hindsight is obvious, but when you are working on this on mapping without having documentation is not so obvious. What is that? Is that if we go here to this corridor, you can see that we have the 3 ramps. And if I zoom in, you might notice that the corridor ends here, where the light gray bit ends, and here, but the ramp is slightly outside. Because you have to cut the space in a clean way, which means that either with a ramp or with a step, you have to start from outside of the space and then outside of the space, because it must be a complete cut of the space. If you leave even a small passage, the engine will not know what to do, because I'm saying, okay, here I'm at level 0, here I'm at level 20 centimeter. But there is a small passage here, and what does it mean? I cannot be at the same time at 0 and at 20. So the system is stupid enough, but correct enough to not know what to do. So figuring out this kind of stuff when you don't have documentation is kind of tricky, and was kind of tricky. Nevertheless, once you figure it out, it makes sense. I mean, everything clicks together and you know what to do. Then there are a couple of other things that I can show, like, for instance, how to draw the stairs, so the stairways. As you can see, there are lots of stairs here. But we will come to this later. And also here, if you check very closely, you can see that all the steps end up a little bit outside of the actual space they are into. And by the way, there is a bug on the map that maybe you can find, but I mean it works, but it's a workaround in the noise area. Because as you might know, the elevators in the noise area have the mezzanine floors, and you can imagine that, as I said before, two spaces that are connected through a door can only be at the same level. And so if you have the same elevator that is connected on the same floor to two mezzanines, if you put doors on both sides, you have issues. Fun times we live. Anyway, this is how the map editor works, and this is the end of this demo. But we will see later that you are getting the possibility to run this on your own computer or premises or whatever, so you can play with it. Because now we are going to talk about c3nav, the project. So we have seen c3nav, the software. Now we are talking about c3nav, the project, and how the SFSCON team, together with me, approached this issue. So the execution approach for bringing this contribution to the SFSCON conference was to work internally in a Git repository, as all the Git repositories of Neu Tech Park, I think all of them, they are reuse compatible, which means that all the artifacts that are inside are released under a free software license and are marked with the SPDX, so you know what you are working with. Inside you will find the documentation that we produced, so how to start mapping a venue from scratch, basically. You will find the database dumps, so it allows you to recreate this map that we have seen, but not the base maps, because I didn't get the approval to release them under a free software license, so they are not inside the repository. And also you will get the CI/CD pipelines that are used to create both the testing and the production environments, because we decided to have two branches basically in the Git repository, and each one of them would be linked to a different pipeline that would allow us to have one development environment that was on my premise, and a testing environment, and then a production environment, where we decided that only the public access should be allowed. So there is no mapping being done there. So we worked with an agile Scrum methodology. We had bi-weekly sprints, basically, where the mapping was done, and then the validation was happening, and then the deployment to testing happened. And toward the projects, I was in touch with that one maintainer that was working on the documentation. He was really helpful. I shared the work in progress of the documentation that we were doing. I've got lots of input from him, and in general, really it was a nice experience working on the documentation together with upstream. And for some issues, we use also the GitHub issues, and I will come to this in a second. And this is the time of the presentation where I put my project manager hat, and I say that if there is something that you take away from this talk, is whatever you do, always keep in mind that you have to do risk management throughout the whole life of the project. No matter what, risk management is nothing fancy, it's nothing really, you just have to take into account that there are opportunities and threats in whatever you are doing. And you want to have them under the radar, because you want to be able to exploit opportunities as soon as you encounter them, and you want to be ready when your threats become issues and know what to do. Why am I saying this? Because of something that happened, of course. Lessons learned are always something that you learn the hard way usually. As I said, we had 3 environments, and the development environment that I set up was set up the way the project recommended. And they have 2 deployments, one for development, which is using SQLite as a database, and one for production that is using Postgres. And I started mapping on the SQLite database. And then when we wanted to bring the first mapping efforts to the testing environment, I've checked that the officially recommended way to sync instances was just running basically Postgres dumps and restoring Postgres dumps on the database layer. But what I didn't tell you is that c3nav is a Django application. Django is a framework in Python, and Django applications come with a few standard methods and command line tools that you can use. One of them is used by the system, by c3nav, which is the one to create the initial user. And actually you can create all the users if you want using the Django create user command. Django also has commands for serializing the content of the database to either JSON or XML or whatever you want, and to deserialize them back to another instance. It's called dump data and load data. It's fairly dump data, load data. And so I was fairly confident that if they were using one of the commands of Django, this was actually a Django application. And I said, okay, well, this might be the official way because it's faster, probably asking the database to do a dump and restoring the dump on the other instance. But in my case, I wanted to change from one database engine to the other, which is not really straightforward if you work with SQL dumps. At least, you never know what to expect. And so I thought, well, there are these 2 commands, and I tried to dump the data. And I got a fairly obscure error in an infinite recursion in the database layer of Django internals that I wasn't really expecting, and I had no idea how to properly debug. Nevertheless, when I see a rabbit hole, I cannot avoid to start going into it. And so I spent quite a lot of time in trying to understand the issues and perform a root cause analysis, mostly because by being on the other side of the fence as a free software maintainer, I know that I don't like to get an issue like this doesn't work. I prefer to get a proper analysis being done and saying why it does not work. I was perfectly aware that there wasn't in place to fix this. I mean, I had not enough experience on the code base, nor on Python, nor on Django. But anyways, I wanted to provide the most information to the people that could actually fix it. And so eventually I tracked it down to some attributes, the coloring, so the categorization of the spaces. I noticed that if I just dropped all the categorization, the dump would be performed. And so I said, okay, there is something there that doesn't really work. And then, of course, since I got it working with this workaround, I tried to restore it, this time on a Postgres instance so that then we can share the data. And also loading the data had an issue. This issue was really easier because instead of an obscure pointer down infinite recursion was a stack trace that was pointing to a single class. And by looking at that class, I've noticed that that line was changed a few commits back. And in the same commit, where that change was made, a comment was added right on top of it that was like, let's hope this does not cause issues in the future. So I reverted that commit, and I noticed that I could restore the dump. And so I created two issues, and I said, okay, there are some issues with serializing and deserializing the data. I don't know how to fix one. Actually, I don't know how to fix either. But what I can tell you is that that comment, let's hope this does not bite in the future, actually is causing issues. So possibly you want to revert it, because I noticed that if you revert it, everything works. Both issues were closed very quickly because the answer was these two methods are not supposed to work. So thank you for the information, but we won't fix this. This works as intended. If you want to exchange data between instances, you have to do the database dump and restore away. It's hard not to get angry in this situation. I know. I was angry for a bit. But then I thought about this. We all know this is a free software project, and the 4 freedoms of free software, it's not something that I have to explain. By the way, I probably already used, and I will use interchangeably, the state and free software or open source software or free Libre software. I mean, basically, I mean software released under a license which is either OSI or FSF approved, and that's it. I acknowledge that there are people that have different philosophical takes on this, but this is my talk, these are my rules. Anyway, the 4 freedoms allows you to, of course, use and run the software, study, change it, share the upstream version, or share a modified version. Again, in my perspective as a maintainer, I am kind of aware, and I care a lot about what I call the reciprocal for software freedoms. So it's true that you are free to use and run my software. At the same time, it's true that you are not entitled to get my support. You don't have any entitlement. You get what I did for free under the terms of the license. I am bound by the terms of the license, the same as you are. So it's difficult to run my software because I worked on it on my Debian laptop and you are using a Windows 11 machine. Bad luck. Try harder, you can manage it, but you should not expect something from me just because I released a software under the free software license. Again, you are free to study the software, you are free to dig the rabbit hole to understand why serializing and deserializing doesn't work in this case when every indication was that it was supposed to work. Yeah, thank you for the effort. I don't care. It's fine. So you are free to change my software and to study it, and at the same time I am perfectly in order if I don't provide documentation to help you doing this. If you want to share my software, if you want to distribute it without changes, do it. But don't expect that I'm giving you visibility. I might, but you are not entitled to it. And if you change it and want to distribute the changes, so if you are doing pull request, which it wasn't possible for me because I didn't know the software, I still don't know the software well enough to do so. But even if I went the extra step to provide the actual fix to what to me looked like issues, I should have accepted if they said thank you, but no thank you, we are not interested. By the way, I invite you to go to the Valetudo cloud. Valetudo is another free software project. It's about firmware for Roombas like robots. And they have a very nice definition, what they call that their project is like a garden. I think it's very well explained. I invite you to read it because it's interesting. So, don't be angry at free software projects that are not treating you in the way you want to be treated, because probably they are right. So, no bad feeling. Things like this happen. And you have to learn to accept. And when you are on the other side, because I know this from, as I said, being there, it's very easy to get burned out by the fact that lots of people feel entitled to get much more than you are willing to give. In some cases, if I release some software that I'm personally developing and I want to just use a free software license on Codeberg, for instance, you can close issue, you can close pull request, you can close everything. This is what I usually do. If it's a personal project, I choose the license, I put it there, and I don't want to be bothered, actually. If people know how to do a git log and get my email and reach out per email, then they did some extra work, and maybe it's worth listening to them. Now, we continue, we are approaching the end, and we continue these parallels between the software development world and other worlds, because I think I can bring this insight from being a professional figure that sits like in between the different worlds. So I want you to think about the SFSCON, about an event like something that you are very familiar with, which is agile development. So I personally like to think that the SFSCON or every yearly conference actually is like an epic. So you have this very huge work in front of you that you are splitting into smaller manageable units. You are involving people from very different backgrounds and very different competencies all working together to reach this. And you start every iteration by looking at what happened the last time, what was good, what was not so good, what you can learn from it. And so you try to get better and you try to improve. So really, this kind of event is iterative development. There is no other word to say. And so this is why I think that you as software developers should not be afraid to be involved with the team that organize an event, because really the way of thinking is very similar. And I can testify that the SFSCON team is very welcoming and is helpful and is a joy to work with. So don't be afraid to reach out. This is something that really you will notice immediately that things, that the language is the same and what is expected is the same. So it will be just a joy to work on this kind of events. This to say that I have a few ideas for you. We have seen some shortcomings of the c3nav software. A few of these actually are things that I believe can be solved just on the client layer, so on the JavaScript side of the editor. It's not really something that needs to dig too deep inside the code base in Python, if you want. A stairway creator, of course, you want each step to be kind of equally spread on the length of the stairway. And I am kind of perfectionist in this case, and so I certainly didn't want to draw one step by one with mouse or whatever. My approach was just to create a spreadsheet where I can input the start and end coordinates, the number of steps, and it will create queries that I will just run through the database. And the actual objects will be created, the actual rows will be created in the database. this can be solved in a much more elegant way if you, of course, work on the client. By the way, here at Neue Tech Park we have U-shaped, like here, stairways or staircases, but in A2 we also have C-shaped staircases, so where also on this side you have steps. So take this into account. Then another really interesting feature to have would be the possibility to clone some elements from one level to the other. Basically, when you start a new level, you are starting from scratch. Now, buildings have this strange characteristic of being kind of similar from when you go up. I don't know why, but they kind of look like this. And actually, the Neue Tech Park, and especially the new buildings, are also very modular. So you might have differences from one level to the other, but these differences are like, on one level you might have a bigger room because it's what on another level are two separate rooms, and here you just miss the wall in between and it gets bigger. So really, in this case, it makes sense to be able to clone or to copy some elements from one level to the other. Here as well, I did it on the database, of course. Another interesting feature would be snapping to edges, because when drawing, it is helpful just if you can either snap to the other object that you already drawn, or even better, if you can snap to the bottom map, to the base map, would be perfect. Probably this is a little bit more difficult to achieve. This would require a bit more study. There is either the SFSCON app or Gobbetti, which are the two schedule tools that are used, where the SFSCON talk list is published, and so is available. Integrating this into the mapping system would mean that an attendee can choose not where to go based on the seminar tree, so this based on not the destination, but based on the talk. Because then the system would say, okay, the talk about c3nav is in noise. And so I can choose it, and I am shown the noise as the destination. This is documented actually in the Gobbetti repository for c3nav, for FOSDEM, in the version of c3nav that was used by FOSDEM, which is maybe still compatible, but possibly not. So it might just work, but I don't think so. Anyway, they also do this for the Chaos Computer Club, and they have issues ongoing. They made some changes for the 38th conference at the beginning of this year, so this might also be a pointer to the right way to approach this issue. And then, of course, what we didn't achieve was provide Wi-Fi based location. Of course, this requires to place all the access points on the map. And I believe that this is probably a huge effort here at Neue Tech Park, because I believe there are quite a lot of access points. So maybe a kind of automation for the building management system would make sense, and it is another topic, of course. There are also issues on the client level, because the application for Android is free software. Is available on F-Droid, is available on Google Play, but this application is not parameterized. Well, you cannot specify the mapping instance that you want to refer to, which means that if you enable this banner, because this is something that you can enable also in your own mapping, then the user clicks here and is landing on the general application that will show the map of the Chaos Computer Club, not the one of the SFSCON. So I don't know whether the project upstream is willing to make this application parametric so that you can specify the actual map that you want to use. or a fork should be made, and in this case also the banner should be changed. This shouldn't be a huge work. It's bigger the effort to map the access points and keeping them in sync, because I guess that if one access point has issues, maybe it's replaced with a temporary one while the one is fixed, but then maybe the one that is fixed is placed in another place, and you cannot really accept this if you are using their signal to pinpoint the location of a person. So we really made it to the end. Congratulations to you. We are kind of 1/3 from the last SFSCON to the next one. This was a nice opportunity for me to share what we did the last year, and hopefully to give you a few ideas of what can be done before the next one. As I said, it has been a real pleasure to work with the SFSCON team, and I think they will really welcome also your contribution. And I've listed a few low-hanging fruits that could provide value to the upstream project, so maybe they would be accepted better than my issues about the Django methods, but also to the SFSCON as an event. So, thank you. I'm here.
Thank you, Daniele. Thank you, Emily.